Okay. So first thing was let me have everyone's faces, please. The first thing was hey, what were you guys doing? It sounded like you were playing a game. How does that have to do with class or whatever? Obviously, we're playing review games, so it's not weird. But then, okay, then she said that she heard people cursing. And I didn't hear it, otherwise I would have said something, but, like, you cannot do that. You cannot curse, alright? Like, all it does is get me in trouble. Even when I didn't hear it, alright? So, like, don't curse in class, just like normal, alright? Please understand that. Okay. That being said, I have to see everyone's face for the entire class period today. What we're going to do, we're going to continue with the, we're going to finish the lesson that we had on the medieval time period of music. All we had to do was finish the last bit of. What are you doing, Dylan? That's annoying. And I do that. Also, make sure you're signed by clicker. So, here we go. I'm going to ask if you can go ahead and tell me if you can see my screen right now. Should be there. Does anybody know anything about where Patrick is?
No.
Did anybody have any other classes?
No.
No. Okay.
Like, I don't know.
All right. Everyone see my screen? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So I said I expect to see everyone's face during this entire thing. Make sure that I can see your face. Okay. So we're gonna finish with the medieval time period, which was just going over the instruments that were introduced. Obviously, there were tons of instruments during this time, and instruments have been around forever, but the unity of instruments really started to develop during the medieval time period. So there he is. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you about this lyra. So the fiddle, which is the ancestor to the violin, was actually developed by from the Byzantine lyra, which I have an early 20th century what's that word? Remake?
Remaster?
No.
Refurbished?
Not refurbished. It's like when they make it, but it's not real, but they make it look like it's real.
Oh, replica.
Replica, yes. Thank you, Raymond. It's an early 20th century replica of the lyra. As you can see, mine has 8 pegs, so I have more than the 3, 4, 5. Unfortunately for me, it needs to get repaired. There's a giant gouge right here, which when I play the strings in a second, if I were to put my fingers anywhere near it, you can feel it vibrating. So all the sound is getting out of there, which is really sad. But it does still play. So if you can listen, it sounds like a guitar, well, like a bad guitar, but it is a stringed instrument, and this is what the fiddle was based off of, which is what the modern day violin is based off of. It was played upright, so it would sit in your lap like this, you would play it like this, and you would play the music. and you can just kind of see the general shape was similar to what we have today. The modern day violin was created in 1500 AD. Now, my question, no one in Concert Band was able to answer this. So my question for you guys is, what do you know the name of the most famous violin maker in the entire universe of Everness?
Could have sworn I remember.
Yamaha.
Yeah, I was about to say Yamaha.
Someone else said Yamaha too. No, it wasn't Yamaha.
You know, I could have sworn I read about this, but then I forgot the name.
Is it?
I love forgetting about everything when it comes to.
Hold up,
No
violin
idea.
maker.
If don't you
I
go
have
searching
violin,
it.
hold
No,
on.
no, no. I see your
You can't
eyes.
just Google
Now,
stuff like-
Here's the thing with this violin maker. It if you had a completely broken, not even playable, would have a lot of money need to go into it to get it refurbished violin from this maker, you could still fetch $200,000 for it. I mean, it is
yeah, I don't have that.
ridiculous. The regular a playable violin by this maker is $1 million, just like that, no question.
Watch, she's gonna say like Dracula.
No, it's actually called a Stradivarius.
Oh.
And the Stradivarius, you'll hear people call it a Strat or a Stradivarius. Strat is like, regular talking.
Strat was the guitar, like Stratocaster.
Nope, Strat is the guitar is the violin that is by I think it's an Italian violin maker, Stradivarius.
Is that
And
Strat with a T or strapped with a P?
T Stradivarius.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say always say strapped.
No, that's funny. Anywho, so just a little fun fact piece of information. Okay, the next thing that you have is the gittern. Just hearing me say that word gittern, you can already tell that it sounds like the word guitar.
I know that.
It was the ancestor to the guitar. You know how in a guitar you have a body and then you have the neck? The gittern, you could not tell what was the body and like where the body ended and where the neck started. It kind of had like this shape that just kind of went, and it didn't really have distinct features like our modern day guitar. It was similar to the lute, which is a contemporary instrument, but a little bit older. It had more time in production during this time. It was, we use a pick to pluck a guitar string. They were plucked by quills. Quills being the feather, a quill, the little pokey part of the feather. So it is that instrument that you see on the screen is the ancestor to the guitar that you guys know and love today. All right, the next one of the medieval period is the dulcimer. The dulcimer was a stringed instrument that you would play sitting on your lap, and you would hit it with hammers, which, like our similarly modern day instrument, would be what that we hit strings with hammers.
I can only think of bells.
Piano.
Yes.
What'd you say?
Piano.
Yeah, the piano. So the dulcimer is similarly played to piano. It's not played with keys hitting hammers, hitting strings. It's just hands hitting hammers, hitting strings, or moving hammers, hitting strings. And the dulcimer was from all over the world, not just Western music, which is what we know and what we study. It was from all over the world, including Mesopotamia, which is modern day. Come on, histories. Huh?
Did I get that at all?
What'd you say?
Turkey.
Close. It's in the area.
Pakistan. I don't know.
Nope. Mesopotamia is modern day Iran.
Ethiopia.
Iran. Ethiopia is nowhere near Turkey. Lord help me.
I'm terrible at geography.
I can tell. All right. No whistling, Gata. So the Gata,
Sorry.
stop whistling. Mute yourself. The So it wasn't just Western, but it was also the Middle East. The dulcimer was a part of that. All right. The next one we have here is the trumpets. Now, everyone has seen videos of or movies where you would have trumpeters at the top of turrets of big castles, and they would blow their horns. The trumpet of the medieval period had a very limited range. They did not have any valves. They could play only a handful of notes, and the whole point of the trumpet of the medieval period was to announce, give warnings, give messages, and announce people during war. The reason being is that you could go at the top of a turret, you could play the trumpet, and it could be carry sound for miles. Or also, if you were in battle, you could hear the Gata, stop it. You could also hear the trumpet over the fighting that was happening. So it's not just it wasn't for music. Okay, it was for like bugle calls. It was for war specifically. All right, and then lastly of the medieval period, we have percussion. Percussion was something we all know that, way back at the beginning of time, you had cavemen hitting stones and rocks together. So percussion is something that's been around forever, but this was really the beginning of the development of percussion, developing sound, generating sound when hit, and actual instruments that were more than just, hitting something on something else. So you had the tambourine, you had drums, which was animal skin stretched over a bowl that you would then hit with either your hands or sticks. So those are the beginning of instruments that we know from the medieval period. Okay? All right. Now, if we move over to the Renaissance over here. Let's see, that's okay. All right. The Renaissance was the second musical time period of our Western music history. It is considered the second half of what is considered the early period. If you remember from the very first day, when we first started talking about the history, I had one slide that had all of the composers from medieval to Renaissance, and it took up an entire slide. And then I had a second slide that had from Baroque to today. The reason why is because it's split into those two periods, the early period and the current period, because the early period took 800, 900, 1,000 years to occur. It happened very slowly. Actually, in the Renaissance, which we're going to get to, hopefully, in the Renaissance is when we were actually able to develop music at a much faster pace because of advancements in technology that we had. So all of a sudden, after 1600, music as a history, as a genre, as everything just developed much more quickly. Okay, so what is the Renaissance? All right, we know that the Renaissance, which literally means rebirth, is when everybody in the time period was starting to rethink things. The reason why they had this what I termed like the shake-up of thought, the reason why they had this is because of kind of the lifestyle that people were able to live during this time. From what I could tell, the scholars that I saw, they said it was really concentrated at the beginning in 14th century Florence, which is in Italy, and it started there because of the economic and political stability that the state was having at that time, and like we saw in when I went over a medieval period, the spread of literacy. So it went from 4 to 6% of the population being literate to a much higher number based on the type of lifestyle that they were able to live. And because of that, you saw more and more common people be introduced to music and art and literature and everything like that. If you can see in these two paintings that I have down here, the beginning of what you would consider today's modern art that you like to see, was really developed during the Renaissance. They developed perspective. Okay, perspective is when you can see that there's a forefront, that there's a back, there's a middle. You can see kind of like the dimensions of a painting. Before the Renaissance, it just looked like one flat surface. So, for example, you would take this one painting that has these columns, and you can see there's the forefront, there's the I don't know the art words for it, but there's the forefront, there's the back, and then there's the middle. You can see three different layers.
Point. There's
It's not a focal point. It's not the focal point, but
The foreground and the back.
The what?
Thing.
The foreground and the
Is a
back.
focal point.
it's not focal point. What did you say, Lucas?
The foreground and background.
Yeah, foreground and background. So you can kind of see that that's something that developed, and you can see it in this art. So people were starting to understand how to create better than they were ever before. So you had that perspective in art, okay, and you also saw geometry. You have arches and all these different things, which is a whole nother thing. And in addition to that, people no longer, totally believed that you had to go and conquer worlds, and they started changing the way that they thought about things. And instead of it being politics of conquering, it became politics of diplomacy, which was totally different than anything before that, right? Okay, so what's their history? Their history. So if during their time period, they developed this reinterest, this kind of wanting to look at Greek and Roman philosophy, ancient Greek and Roman philosophy. So they took the philosophies of the Greeks and of the Romans, and they began looking at it not as like just a philosophical standpoint, but taking those philosophies and saying, how do we move this and make it make sense with our current humanity. So with that being said, they then, in addition to having the philosophy of the Greeks and Romans, they also took the dramas, the writings of Greek poets, a la Odyssey, and they say that the opera is based off of Greek drama. Many people don't like opera. They don't understand it for today's, ear. But it has a very, if it wasn't for opera, you wouldn't have so much music that we have today. I personally am not an opera fan, but you have to learn. You have to appreciate it for what it is, and it's different, and I get that, but it really is kind of interesting how they develop that. Now, the fun thing with opera is that it no longer became music for the sole purpose of worship. You ended up having the opportunity to enjoy music for music's sake, which was something that never happened before. So the Renaissance brought about this idea that you can enjoy music for just pure entertainment. And because of that, because you could just have music entertainment, therefore it became commercially successful, and you could make money being a musician. You could make money making instruments. You could make money writing music, okay, which is something that before this, if you remember, it was only the church that there was no music other than that, right? So it became economically kind of like an opportunity for people. Families begin to sing and play in their home, which was something that was totally different. They owned their own instruments and they would sing and play music to entertain themselves. Wealthy families would hire out professionals because, that's what wealthy people do, All right. The first kind of composer that people would know is John Dunstable. He was considered a late medieval, early Renaissance composer. If you can see, he was born in 1390, died in 1453. Just remember when we talk about dates, okay, boys and girls, just boys. When we talk about dates, it's not like, Jonathan, cut it out. It's not just, it's not exactly the date that I say. It's kind of like roughly. Roughly, the Renaissance was 1400s to 1600s. It could have been 1380 to 1590, okay? It's just roughly that time period. So John Dunstable became famous in his time period for being a composer for the King Henry V's brother. If you ever were to look up pictures of John Dunstable, even when he was younger, all of the all of the paintings that I found, they have this very distinguishable nose. So like no matter what, profile or face front picture you have of him, they always made it a point to like kind of show his nose, which was interesting to me because even if you look at it right now, you can tell it is prominent. And I don't know, it's just very interesting to see how they really took the time and detail to do the shape of the nose. Whereas before, a nose was just a triangle on the face, Anyway, so in addition to being a composer, he was a mathematician, astronomer, astrologer, blah. And he was just like, a generally smart guy. So, and you can't really tell, but this music is an example of his compositions. It's really starting to look like modern day music. Okay. There are 5 lines on the staff, just like we have. There are notes, there are note heads, there are bars, there are stems. It's really starting to look like music like we have today. All right. Here is where it really starts to come home for us. During this time period, the third interval, which the 3, again, still reminiscent of the Holy Trinity, the third interval was considered dissonant. However, it can take any piece of music that they have, and even today, any piece of music that you have, and it can make a piece of music feel major or B major and feel or sound and B minor, all within a third or a third triad. The ability for a composer to use the triad in music actually gave them the opportunity to develop emotional content. If you remember from last week, okay, we talked about this system that the church created. Kyle, what was the name of that system that the church created? It had 7 of them. It's like our modern day major and minor scales. They were what?
No. I remember song about it. I don't remember the name.
There's Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian.
Like, you want me to name the 7?
No. Just the name of what it is called.
Scales.
Nope. Alex.
Polyonian or something like that?
No, you're thinking of polyphony.
Polyphony.
But that's not it. Lucas.
I don't know.
Anyone?
Octaves? I don't know.
Harmonies?
Okay, nope, not harmonies. It was the Phrygian, Dorian, Ionian, all of these 7 of them, they're called modes. Okay, so you have the Dorian mode, Phrygian mode, Ionian mode. It's like our scales. But in those modes, you only were able to create kind of like two emotions. There was like, or three, maybe technically. There was like what was considered holy, which is not really an emotion, but just like a style. Sad, and like it wasn't happy, but whatever. So you didn't really have the ability to create emotion in music like how we have the ability to today, and it's based on the ability to create music via these triads. So oh, before we do that, if you look at this screen, okay, so I'm gonna take a piano, and this right here, the CEG, is a C major triad. The C major triad has a major third between C and E and a minor third between E and G. So if you see this here, that is what creates a major chord. If you flatten the third here, you now have a minor third. And if you flatten the third, then what ends up happening to this second? If you flatten this, it makes this smaller. Therefore, this becomes a minor. And this one here, Jonathan, becomes what? If I take this C, E, and G, this is a major third, C to E. This is a minor third, E to G. I'm going to flatten this E right here. This is now no longer E, but it's E flat. So this is no longer a major third, but this becomes a minor third. So therefore, this has to become what? Think about it. Jonathan, I can't hear you.
I don't know, I'm lost. I'm confused.
So this C to E here, it talks about four semitones. So one, if you look at the piano, my mouse is on the piano.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4. And that creates a major chord. Okay, C to E, major chord. I am now going to flatten this E to an E flat. So I now have 1, 2, 3. Well, if you look here, E to G, that is what is considered a minor third. So this E to G here, so I have 1, 2, 3, minor. If I flatten this, it is now E flat. It's going to have 1, 2, 3, 4. So what does that become? Instead of it being a minor third,
Should be a major third.
it becomes a major third. Okay, do you guys see that?
Weird.
Can you kind of see that? Thumbs up. Can I hear a thumbs up, thumbs in the middle, or a thumbs down? It's okay. It's thumbs down. I just need to see. Kyle, focus and pay attention.
Raymanis appears to be confused still.
Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to play for you on a virtual keyboard these 4 chords. I'm going to play for you this major. I'm going to play for the minor. I'm going to play the diminished and the augmented. This is an awesome part of theory that I wish I had the opportunity to really go into depth and detail with you guys about. There's just not even close to the amount of time, but I want to at least get you to hear it. Okay, so can you hear this? Just give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Could you hear that? Okay, hold on 1 second.
Can you go again?
Yeah.
It's just a little bit quiet.
Alright.
Okay, so here we go. So I'm going to start by playing a major triad. Okay, so it was the first one. The major triad sounds like this. When you hear that, it should sound happy, right? Like it doesn't give you any emotion of like, ooh, that's just I don't really ooh.
Oh wait, is this like tension and then home?
Huh?
Is this like tension and home? I think that's what I was like. That's what I've heard of it.
Can you save that question and ask me when I can put my headphones in, because I can't actually hear right this second. No. Get.
No one, my dog every 2 seconds.
Okay, so here is the major chord. Okay, here is a minor chord. Can you hear the difference? Listen.
Yeah.
Go ahead and everyone give me a thumbs up or thumbs down if you can hear the difference between the major and the minor. Okay, so major, diminished. Okay, so minor, diminished. Major, major, minor, diminished. All right, and you can see the notes on my keyboard. The last one is augmented, where I'm going to take a major chord and I'm going to augment or sharpen the final chord by half a step. So it's going to go from major to augmented. So can you kind of hear it reaching? It's like da da, like it's trying to go somewhere. It's like leading you somewhere. That's how you have music that can kind of show motion happening. So all 4 of them in order: major, minor, diminished, augmented. Or if you go from like most space to least space, you're going to have augmented, which is major, minor, diminished. Could you hear all those?
Yeah.
So anyway, before this, there wasn't the ability for composers to show emotion or play emotion with the music. And so this was really the beginning of having that ability. Hopefully those of you that are here next year, I can continue teaching you about this stuff. It's actually pretty darn interesting. But I mean, there's so much to music. There's so much. It's pretty incredible. Okay. We are going to, unfortunately, we did not have enough time to finish. So we haven't actually even discussed how music was able to start getting so much quicker in its ability to progress. So that'll have to be next week. So if you can help remind me that we just did the 3rd interval and we're going to start with these paintings. That way I can remember. I mean, I'll probably remember, but just in case, since I generally have a bad memory. That being said, a handful of you guys missed your first missed your
Is that?
Yeah, I know.
I was gonna ask about that because I know what mine was.
Next day. Like,
so that's
That's
because
next
that's because you guys not listen to what I'm trying to tell you, which is you have to look snapshot. You have to look. I put the links on that we have on the snapshot. I put the Google Meet link class. I put the Google Meet link for the tutorial. I put the YouTube link for all the videos that we've taken. It has the link to your opportunities for extra credit. It has the link for the videos that I ask you to watch before class. It has the links for the schedule for when you're supposed to go. Everything is on there so that I've made it so that there's actually really no excuse. Okay? Like, you have to do that. It's under Modules eLearning 2020. It's April snapshot. I actually went over this in class on Monday. I showed you guys where it was in class on Monday. And I want you guys to understand that there's a certain responsibility that you have as students, that after I put the information out there, if you don't know or if you understand, you have got to come see me. Okay? In addition to that, please pay attention to what's coming in the future. If you have a question as to what, for example, any of the projects that we have, or test assignments that we have, if you have a question about what they are, you need to come see me. Tuesday is not a good time to see me for tutorial because people are taking scales. But Thursday is a great time to see me for tutorial because I have nothing there. And every single tutorial, I'm sitting in front of my computer waiting for people to show up, and no one shows up. So when you say you have questions or you don't understand or whatever, there's nothing I can do. Okay?
Is the link for the tutorial? Oh, it's in here.
It's all at the bottom.
Sometimes.
What?